Hi,
Hi.
welcome to Finding Lightness in Blindness, episode 1.1. We are doing a follow up from our first episode. I am Ann Wagner. I am blind due to retinitis pigmentosa, and I work as a clinical psychologist. But I'm here only in my role as a citizen psychologist, and I'm not entering into any official provider role with anyone who watches this video.
And my name is Eric Wingham. I'm married to Ann. Maybe that's obvious. And I'm a semi-retired journalist. I'm a longtime print journalist here in the Twin Cities, and for 10 years I worked in public radio as well. And we wanted to answer a few of the questions that came up after our first episode. And I want to start with one that we heard from a couple of different people who watched it. They asked the same thing. Essentially, how do I deal with my embarrassment at the way Ann eats? Let me be clear. I never feel embarrassed at how Ann eats. I never feel anything but an irrational pride at her being with me. She never behaves in any way that is less than gracious. She is the soul of decorum. She never makes a mess. And if I suggested that her eating is embarrassing to me, that was way overstating the case. Some of it took a little getting used to, but I was never embarrassed. I'm proud to be with her.
And I've never felt or noticed anybody around me ever acting embarrassed. Nobody's ever said that people were watching me, or I think if people noticed, they just saw somebody enjoying their meal, and that's their experience. So for people who might be feeling embarrassed just because they haven't yet practiced and habituated to just being with your food, being effective with it, and letting other people be effective in their ways.
No, I eat like a warthog.
But I am aware there were a couple of people who said they'd actually hoped for some tips, so I was thinking about that. And so some simple tips, if you don't want to be using your fingers when you're eating, is if there's anybody around you, or a waiter or waitress, telling you where the food is on the plate based on a clock scale, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, feeling where everything is before you even start eating, where the plate is, the utensils, your water glass, etc., just to get oriented. Having your cane, if you use a white cane, having it visible next to you is a really simple, quick, and easy way to help people understand why you're using your fingers. And I think it would be exceedingly rare for anybody to judge you once they understand the context. If you're not using a cane yet, but it could be helpful in darker settings, I encourage you to start using it to get used to and habituated to that. At first, I felt self-conscious when I first started using it. That goes away very quickly. It's just really helpful way of communicating. And people can cut. You can ask the restaurant staff to cut your food. I've done that before. It's certainly very helpful. And they can cut everything you want cut. You just have to ask.
That suggestion came from John, but Ann already knew about it. It was news to me. I've never seen it done. But thank you, John, for bringing it up. We also got an inquiry from Richard, who wanted to know if Ann's ever addressed issues of grief and anger over vision loss. He recently lost the little bit that he had left, and he's wondering about that.
Yeah, we plan to talk about that in a future episode. Grief and loss are the core emotions related to loss of any physical ability. So we will be talking about that. So stay tuned.
And Carlos also has vision loss, and he's interested in becoming a therapist himself. And he wondered if you might have some advice for him. He says his friends say that he'd be a natural.
Explore it. I would recommend checking with your state services for the blind and visually impaired to see if they have any resources. Back when I was a college student and grad student, state services offered help with tuition, many resources and gadgets that were helpful. But it's an incredibly rewarding career, and so I encourage you to look into it.
Now, Alice, thank you so much, Alice, for this easy question. She would like to know how long we've been together, and how old was Ann when Ann realized that she had RP?
Because it runs in my family, my parents knew to take us in for eye exams really early. So by age 4, they could tell that my retinas were starting to deteriorate. So by age 4, I knew I I had the disease and was going to eventually go blind, but I was 17 when the vision loss met the standards for legal blindness due to the tunnel vision part. And then the next question is, when did we meet?
Yes. How long we've been together?
How long we've been together? We started dating about 9 years ago. We knew each other years before.
Seems like yesterday.
He was actually my next door neighbor for a year at one point. So we were in the same neighborhood and acquaintances, but we didn't start dating till 9 years ago. And we got married 5 years ago. Yeah.
Now, Peg also was interested in that question of how we met, but she wanted to know more generally, when meeting somebody or filling out an online dating profile, when is the right time to acknowledge your vision loss?
That's a really interesting and thoughtful question. And before I met my first husband, Eric and I, this is both our second marriage. So before my first husband, I had been involved in some online dating, and that was something I struggled with too. I don't know the right answer for that, other than being transparent and authentic, and trying to present it in a way that's not where it's a huge thing. I did that at times, and in hindsight, I've regretted that because it's not part of my identity. I'm Ann first, and my vision loss is something I deal with. But other people, we all have things we deal with that we bring to the relationship. And I think if you can phrase it in that kind of context, we all have things. This happens to be one that you're bringing, but that you have and plan to keep learning ways to adapt and accommodate and be the person you're meant to be in spite of it. And you have a lot of love to give and all those other things. So.
And we'd like to acknowledge our friend Mark in Myrtle Beach, who has staged, I think they call them Dining in the Dark events. They're fundraisers and consciousness raisers for the philanthropic community. And he says that these dinners where everybody eats, the sighted people eat with blindfolds, at these dinners, these CEOs and executives take their turn at what they call the kitchen station, where their job includes measuring and spreading and pouring. And he says it's simultaneously fun, humbling, and enlightening for them. And it sounds like it would be fun and enlightening for everybody else, too.
Yeah, so even CEOs can look at the judgments showing up as they experience under the blindfold, using our fingers to do things potentially, or other helpful little gadgets.
So that answers some of the questions we got last time. Thank you so much
for all your feedback.
Yeah, and for watching. And we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Bye.
We'll be back.